Hi, I'm Heather Box, and I am the co-founder and CEO of the Million Person Project, which is a global project about love, storytelling, and connecting changemakers. And I am so excited because I am here today with someone who's very dear to me. This is the founder and CEO of Move the Crowd, Rha Goddess.
Hey everybody.
And Rha is someone who is very important to me. She's a dear friend, she's a mentor, and she has been my coach through Move the Crowd for 5 years. So I'm really excited to just jump right into this conversation around personal storytelling with you today.
My pleasure. Let's do it.
All right. So I would first just love to hear what you believe the role of personal storytelling is in your leadership and in leadership in general.
I mean, I believe that our stories are the foundation of everything we do. I think it is our reason why. So when I'm connecting with anyone, the first question I always ask is, I want to know your story. Because I believe that we learn more about who we are through our journeys than through anything else. So, when we step into a role of leadership, we're always looking at why is this important to us, whatever issue we're focused on, whatever, thing it is that we're passionate about. There's always a reason why, and where there's a reason, there's a story. So I think it's foundational. I think it's fundamental to the call to leadership.
Yeah. And I do this work with people, as you know, from all over the world. And one of the common things that come up for most of us is that it isn't always comfortable. It can feel like jumping off a cliff.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, in your journey, if there is a part of your story that you hesitated to share publicly and why? And then what was it like when you came to share that, and what shifted for you?
Yeah, I have several moments like that in my own history of sharing my story with, on various stages and in different contexts and communities. And it's interesting because the first thing I'll say is that for me, it is important to be on that edge. I have a deep commitment to authenticity, and if it's too rehearsed, you lose a connection. So I think there's something for me personally about how am I, when I'm bringing story to the stage, how is it resonant and relevant for me in that moment? And the first time I really started to understand that and made the decision to share a really scary part of my story was a part of my story where I was actually shot at. And it was a very traumatizing moment for me. And it was one of those things where it was a come to Jesus moment. It was, about my purpose. It was about where I hadn't been stepping up to the plate in my life, kind of been hiding out and hanging out. And I had a lot of fear and trepidation about just, could I tell it? What was going to happen to me on the stage once I told? Would the bottom of the floor fall out? Would people understand why I was sharing it? And again, there's a sensitivity for me because I don't think it was about sensationalism. It was a very deeply spiritual experience for me. And we all know that some of us are out and some of us are not out around spirituality, and and people have perceptions about that. And so it was a lot of internal, sort of talking myself into staying on the edge, on the ledge, that had to occur. But I would say that for me, the experience of actually being willing to share that opened up so much for me, and many people who, were in the audience at that time, just thanked me for being willing to demonstrate that kind of courage.
And what was it like for you immediately after you shared? Like, what was your...
Oh, it's, you feel exposed. I mean, you feel exposed. And at the same time, for me, there's a sense of freedom in that. Because I think so much of our conditioning is about how we hide and look good and put on and pull together. And, and I think we're at a time where we're really being called to reveal. And reveal the most authentic part of ourselves in the name of our own liberation and in the name of the liberation of others. I think that's what this is about, you know. And I try to keep that in front of me every time I have a conversation in some way that I know that anybody's going to be privy to. How do I keep stripping away the false self so that the real me can emerge?
Yeah. Wow, thank you. And I know as our viewers are watching this, they're thinking, well, what did she say? You know?
What was the story?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, this was at a time in my life where I was just really beginning to wake up into this conversation of my own spirituality, beginning to think about my inner world and my relationship with myself, bigger than sort of whatever external messages I was navigating about how I should look or what I should do for a living or, you know, what I should care about. And it was a time of really, really deep searching. And I had begun a 86-day cleansing fast.
Whoa.
With the amazing Queen Afua. And I was coming back from the health food store, and it was in the wintertime, so it got dark really early. It was maybe about 5:36, it was really dark. And I was coming down my block, and I come into the gate, walking up to the entrance of my door, and a young man came by on a bike. And I had my headphones in at the time, so I couldn't hear him, but I could see he was gesturing to get my attention. And I sort of pulled off my headphones, and he asked me where the Johnsons were. And I was trying to think. I knew pretty much everybody on the block. Had been there a really long time. I was like, I don't know. You know, as I'm searching my mind to try to figure out who he's talking about, he pulls a gun.
Whoa.
And he asked for my wallet. He said, you know, come here, basically give me your wallet. And we went back and forth. So I said, you know, I started to open my mouth and literally felt a beam of energy come down through the top of my head and go all the way down through the soles of my feet, like planting me in place. And I felt a calm, almost an eerie calm come over me. And I just said to him, I don't have anything for you, brother. And he said, get over here or I'm going to shoot you. I said, I don't have anything for you. And he said, I'm going to shoot you. And then he fired the gun.
What?
And I saw the light flash. I saw the smoke literally come out the end of the barrel. And I saw sort of the flash of the bullet leaving the chamber. And I heard the sound. But I can't tell you where the bullet went. And he was point blank range. I mean, within maybe 6 feet of me. And he was as shocked as I was, as you can imagine, because we both know he shot at me directly. And he hit the gun and actually was trying to fire it again. And it would not fire for him. And he jumped on his bike and he ran off. And you know, I kind of stood there for a while and still sort of felt this presence. And then I slowly felt the presence sort of slip away. And that's when I like totally freaked out. I mean, you know, like freaked out. And then it was interesting because then the calm came back. And then I started to get the messages, and it was a very clear message about my purpose. It was a very clear message about what I was here to do, and it was a very clear message about, you know, either you're going to do what you're here to do, or we're going to take you out. And it had everything to do with my dharma and everything to do with my karma, and that was a huge turning point for me.
Whoa.
You know, yeah.
Whoa.
So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. As someone who has been a recipient of your work and of your love, like it's a meaningful, very meaningful path to be walking. And as your mentees, your students, your coaches,
my beloveds.
Your beloveds.
That's what I call you all. Okay. My beloveds.
Let me just speak for myself. Like, as one of your beloveds, I learn a lot from what you share with me. I also learn a lot from the way that you are in the world and from watching that. And just even watching you share that story and how you look in your body and how you were navigating to share in a way that we could, you know, come along the journey with you, even though it was such a scary moment. I know that I'm not the only person watching you and learning from that, and I appreciate you sharing yourself in that way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What is the difference between owning your story and letting your story define you? So owning the leadership lessons within it, but not letting it define who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me as leaders, what is so important is that we understand that we're always learning. We're always growing. There's nothing stagnant about our experience of life. And, you know, when we make decisions about sharing our story, it's kind of sort of what I shared earlier, when you want to make sure that it still has resonance for you. Because I think we all know when it feels rehearsed. We know when it's plastic. We know, you know, and I think for people who are sharing things that are really deep or have been deep for them, there's a way for me that we show respect and consideration to the listener by being willing to be present in our own stories. And I say that because I know you see this as well. There are many people who take the stage and they're not present in their own story. They're not necessarily present as they're sharing their own story. And there may be lots of reasons why. But I feel that it's so important to stay on the edge of your own personal narrative because you're living that story every day. And so, you know, when you let your story define you, I feel there's a way in which you've decided that the rest of your narrative doesn't matter, or the rest of who you are doesn't matter, that this is the only thing that's really important. And I see it, unfortunately, more often than not in the sort of marketing and branding context, that people get defined by their stories, right? Because that's the brand. And I think we get robbed. You know, and you know me, I'm going to keep it very authentic in this conversation. I think we get robbed of really knowing who people are when they decide that this one thing is what defines them. We are so much more than that. We are multidimensional, we are multifaceted, we are multi-perspectived. And I think the richness is the complexity and the contradictory juxtapositions of who we are, and the way that we can really give people access to that, I think is really where the revolution is.
Yes. I like the word resonance that you're using, like when your story is resonating with you. You know, a lot of times I say to my clients, the act of telling your story is for you. It's like when you're up there telling your story, and then you go into why you're doing what you're doing. When you start talking and you put yourself into the energy of what brought you there, even if sometimes it's really hard to share, it's like you're honoring yourself and you're honoring your journey, and you're saying, this is what brought me here. Like, it doesn't matter, the good, the bad, the unthinkable, it is your journey. And so I love that idea of it being resonant within you. It's scary to share your story, like I said, sometimes. And so what about people who are kind of like navigating and they're thinking, should I do it, should I not do it? You know, some of my clients even walk all the way to back at the stage and then they say, oh, I can do it this time, next time, you know? So what is your advice for people who are sort of doing that dance?
Yeah, we're in a time where I feel that we as humanity are working diligently to develop the moral courage to be seen. And there's a way intuitively that I think we understand, whether we can give words to it or not, we understand that it's necessary for the next evolution of consciousness. Our consciousness as a planet, as a species, is necessary. And yet we know that a lot of what we're having to shed consistently is all of the conditioning about, you know, being in control of whatever goes on around us or through us. What I would say to your folks who are on the edge is, you know, is to take it one step at a time, but be willing to challenge yourself. Be willing to challenge yourself and take care of yourself at the same time. And I think that both are important. You know, when I'm sharing really deeply and really authentically, which is my commitment all the time, I know that there's a certain way that I have to prepare myself in order to be able to really hold space and have reverence for myself, have reverence for the audience, and have reverence for the story. And all three of those things for me need to be present in order for my intention to connect and transform to happen. And I think that that's the other piece I would say is, that we have an opportunity to always get present to what is our intention. So I'm sharing this story in service of what? In service of what for me, for you, for the work. Why am I here? What is this about? It's, in the way sometimes we can get present to our desired impact, present to our commitment, gives us a little bit more courage to stand out there. Because it's like, oh, it's not about me in that way. It's about something that's bigger than me in terms of my commitment and what I'm here to do and what I'm here to offer. So I think these rituals and practices that enable you to take really good care of yourself before, during, and after, as well as the reverence that you show for yourself, for the story, for the audience, and then this ability to really focus on your why. What's so important about this? Why are you sharing? What is it in honor and in service of in terms of your commitment?
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Who has been one of your teachers in life, and when did they come into your life?
I've had so many. I mean, so many teachers. Think about that question. It's like, God, I go into the Rolodex of my mind, and I'm like, man, okay, which of the 300 plus, I think in the context of story, I think about myself growing up. I read, James Baldwin, Zora Neale Hurston, Toni Morrison. So I've had the privilege at a very young age, Alice Walker, to have access to some of the most incredible storytellers. And I think I was taught about the authenticity and how to sort of come into the most authentic and true parts of myself by reading those stories. There was a way, just that the realness of those journeys and of those struggles, even in the context of fiction, right? There was a way that I got transported through those stories that enabled me to always be looking for those parts of myself. Maybe not the most pretty, but certainly the most useful in the context of my own commitment to liberation and this opportunity to support and give permission to and encourage the liberation of other people. For many people, this occurs like cliche, but it so is not for me, and I believe it is not for many people. But Martin Luther King, you want to talk about somebody standing on the edge, on the ledge, and being willing to speak the truth, and being willing to speak the truth in a way that was compelling, and the reverence, again, for me, a tremendous teacher for me. Also a big part of my history growing up because of who my parents were and their journey, through civil rights movement in this country. So, he's probably at the top, right? And then I would say all of the others that I mentioned. For me, it's like, what is it to imagine that every day you take the podium, you're facing the potential of death just for speaking your truth. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. And this is sort of the big unspoken, what if I will be persecuted? What if I, will be annihilated? And what did it take for him every single time to open his mouth and allow the truth to come forth? And I feel like that is the greatest act of love there ever is, when someone is willing to completely surrender and not have the certainty that people are going to be applauding. And I think that, whether that's metaphorically or literally, I think there's something available for us in this conversation of how do we really allow ourselves to be instruments and surrender. I think for me, the most compelling moments I've ever had sharing my story are the places where I've allowed myself to surrender and not been concerned or managing in my head about how it's landing, how I'm being judged, whether there's going to be a standing ovation at the end or rainbows or, or moonbeams or whatever. But I've just been willing to allow myself to be. And I think that is my life's practice. And I think that's the practice I strive to make available for the people I serve and I work with.
So thank you so much for joining me today to be a part of this conversation around personal storytelling. I appreciate you more than words can describe. And I am so thankful that the world brought us together. And I support you and I honor you, and I'm so excited to see where Move the Crowd goes, where your leadership goes. And thank you. So if you want to just close by letting the listeners know a little bit more about Move the Crowd, that would be great.
Thank you. And I do want to say that I love you, and it's been an honor to serve you. Really an honor. So we get to serve amazing people like this. That's who we are. That's what we do. We're an entrepreneurial training company. We're committed to change makers, people who want to make a difference in the world, people who are willing to be of service and answer the call to be of service because they know that that's what we're here to do. It doesn't matter how big or how small the contribution is, but that the contribution is real. It's rooted in love, that it's from the heart. We help make your vision sustainable. That's what we do at Move the Crowd. We help you stay true, get paid, and do good.
Thank you so much.
I love you.
I love you.